The prince also cries, but alone, where the marble halls forget his name. Crowns glitter loudly in daylight, yet silence weighs heavier than gold at night. He walks through corridors of echoes, each step rehearsed, each breath measured. Smiles are stitched into his public face, threaded tight so sorrow cannot escape. Trumpets announce his arrival to the world, but no one hears his heart arrive home. Banners rise like proud promises, while his thoughts kneel quietly inside him. He learned early the language of power, how to speak without revealing truth. He learned how to nod instead of scream, how to rule kingdoms, not his tears. At banquets, laughter spills like wine, yet his cup is always half full of memory. Faces blur into polite devotion, none daring to ask if he is well. The prince also cries, but alone, when the moon removes his armor. In the privacy of sleepless hours, he unbuttons the weight of expectations. His bed knows secrets the throne never will, how heavy a destiny feels on bare skin. Pillows witness storms without thunder, salted by tears trained not to fall. He remembers childhood without titles, dust on knees, freedom in running breath. Before the word majesty built a wall, before love learned to bow. Now affection arrives filtered and careful, measured by benefit and bloodline. Every embrace asks something in return. Every praise carries a quiet demand. He is surrounded, yet untouched, known by many, understood by none. 1,000 eyes watch his posture, not one watches his pain. The prince also cries, but alone, behind doors guarded by loyalty. Even the guards believe in strength, never guessing what they protect. Letters arrive scented with ambition, inked with requests, favors, dreams. No letter asks how his heart sleeps, or if it still believes in tenderness. He governs lands of endless horizon, yet cannot cross his own sorrow. Maps do not mark the fragile places, where grief settles like evening dust. At dawn, he dresses in courage, buttons discipline over his pulse. Mirrors salute him with perfection, never reflecting the cracks inside. The crown rests heavy, yet balanced, trained not to tilt, trained not to fall. So is his heart, disciplined and silent, beating carefully beneath silk and steel. The prince also cries, but alone, when prayers echo back unanswered. Faith becomes a whispered companion, sitting beside him in the dark. He asks not for escape or mercy, only for one honest moment. A moment where he is not an emblem, not a symbol, not a promise. Just a man with tired eyes, longing to be held without consequence. Longing for love that does not kneel, or calculate the worth of closeness. History will carve his victories in stone, sing his name in heroic verses. But history rarely records tears, especially royal ones. So he learns to cry quietly, to let sorrow dissolve into breath, to turn pain into patience, and loneliness into leadership. The prince also cries, but alone, yet still he rises with the sun. Still he stands between chaos and peace. Still he carries the weight forward, because a kingdom sleeps better at night, believing its prince never breaks. And so he breaks only in shadows, where no one is watching. The moon understands him best, a ruler of night, distant and calm. It watches him without judgment, offering light without questions. If you ever see him smile too softly, know that courage lives behind it. Know that strength sometimes sounds like silence, and royalty sometimes tastes like tears. The prince also cries, but alone, not because he is weak, but because he is human, and humanity needs a place to weep. The prince also cries, but alone, when the city finally sleeps, when lamps bow their heads to darkness, and even ambition closes its eyes. In those hours he removes his ring, the one that seals commands and fate. His fingers feel lighter without it, as if briefly forgiven by power. He listens to the wind crossing balconies, a traveler with no allegiance. The wind does not call him your highness, calls him by his breathing. He wonders how many rulers before him stood exactly where he stands now, Pretending strength was endless. Pretending solitude was noble. Portraits line the walls like witnesses, faces frozen in brave serenity. None admit the nights they trembled. None confess how often they cried. The prince also cries, but alone, because tears must have permission. In public, his eyes are guarded gates. In private, they become rivers. He has learned how to mourn quietly, how to grieve without sound. A skill no teacher announced, yet one destiny demanded. Sometimes he imagines another life, one without inherited thrones. A life where love calls his name plainly, without fear, without protocol. In that life he walks unnamed streets, buys bread, laughs without echo. No one bows, no one plots, no one measures his worth. But dawn always interrupts dreaming. Reality knocks with golden fists. Servants arrive with schedules and duty, and the prince returns to armor. The prince also cries, but alone, even as he signs peace into existence. Ink flows steady from his pen, though his heart shakes beneath the desk. He chooses the lesser wound for many, even when it deepens his own. Sacrifice is praised in speeches, but lived in silence. Children wave flags with innocent joy, unaware of the cost of calm. He smiles for them especially, hiding storms behind gentle eyes. He knows one wrong decision can rewrite history in blood, so he doubts himself endlessly, questioning even his best intentions. The prince also cries, but alone, when apologies cannot be spoken, when love must be released for duty, when promises expire without warning. He buries names inside his chest, names the world must never know. They bloom at night like forbidden flowers, fragrant, painful, unforgettable. There are nights he speaks to God, not as a ruler but as a son. His prayers stumble, unscripted, raw, asking for strength without losing softness. He asks how to stay kind in a world sharpened by power, how to remain human when treated like a symbol. The prince also cries, but alone, yet still believes in tomorrow. Belief is his quiet rebellion, hope his most private treasure. He trusts that compassion survives crowns, that mercy can guide authority, that one day history may learn that kings had hearts too. If you hear of his greatness, remember what was never announced. Every triumph was paid with solitude, every victory shadowed by tears. The prince also cries, but alone, but his tears do not weaken the throne. They strengthen the soul beneath it, teaching him why he must endure. And so the night holds him gently until morning calls him back. A man before sunrise, a prince again at dawn. The prince also cries, but alone, when even memories grow tired, when yesterday feels heavier than armor, and tomorrow refuses to speak. He sits by the window of stars, counting constellations like regrets. Each light reminds him of a choice, each shadow of a path not taken. Silk curtains breathe with the night, as if the palace itself is listening. Stone walls pretend not to feel, yet they have absorbed centuries of sorrow. The prince also cries, but alone, for friendships that could not survive crowns. Laughter once shared without caution now echoes like a closed door. Trust became a rare currency, spent carefully, hoarded instinctively. He learned betrayal often wears smiles, and loyalty sometimes costs blood. He studies his hands in candlelight, hands trained to bless and condemn. They tremble only when unseen, human despite their power. No one taught him how to rest, only how to remain standing. Fatigue became a private companion, following him through victories. The prince also cries, but alone, because strength is never complete. It leaks through cracks of empathy, through the places that still care. He remembers his mother's voice, soft as dawn before the world knew him. She called him by a simple name, one untouched by destiny. Her words still cradle his fear when responsibility feels unbearable. He wonders if she foresaw this life, or if love believed it could protect him. Sometimes he envies ordinary grief, the freedom to collapse openly. to be broken without consequence, to heal without witnesses. But his sorrow must be disciplined, folded neatly into his nights. Mourning demands composure, and the kingdom demands certainty. The prince also cries, but alone, yet never allows bitterness to rule. He buries resentment deep, so mercy can grow above it. He understands that power without kindness is merely violence with decoration. So he chooses patience again and again, even when it exhausts him. Rain begins tapping the marble floors, a rhythm matching his breath. For a moment, the sky cries with him, sharing the weight of being silent. He does not ask to be understood, only to remain true. True to the boy he once was, true to the man he must become. The prince also cries, but alone, but tears sharpen his wisdom. They teach him the cost of command and the value of restraint. When dawn finally reaches him, he stands straighter than before, not because the pain has vanished, but because it has been honored. And somewhere between night and morning, a lonely crown learns humility, worn by a heart that breaks quietly, yet still beats for millions. The prince also cries, but alone, and in that solitude, he becomes more than a ruler. He becomes worthy of the throne. The prince also cries, but alone, when the palace clocks forget mercy. Each tick reminds him of promises, each chime of time he cannot reclaim. Morning arrives dressed in protocol, footsteps measured, curtains drawn. The sun bows to no one, not even a crown. He washes his face with cold resolve, hiding traces of the night. No one must see the red of sorrow, only the calm of command. The prince also cries, but alone, because leadership is endless waking. While others dream of safety, he guards the fragile idea of peace. Council halls fill with urgent voices, advice sharpened by interest. Every word fights for survival, few fight for truth. He listens more than he speaks, silence often being the wiser blade. Decisions gather behind his eyes, heavy as unshed rain. Maps unfold like wounded skins, borders bleeding into arguments. He studies them with tired care, knowing lines can kill. The prince also cries, but alone, after choosing between wrongs. When justice feels imperfect, and mercy feels dangerous, his signature ends wars and begins others, ink stronger than steel. The hand remains steady, the heart does not. At ceremonies, applause rises like waves, crashing against his composed smile. No one hears the undertow, pulling quietly at his chest. Children offer flowers without fear, eyes bright with trust. Their innocence wounds him gently, a reminder of what he must protect. The prince also cries, but alone, because hope is fragile in his hands. He carries it carefully through chaos, afraid to drop it. At dusk, the palace exhales, formalities loosen their grip. He walks alone through gardens, where statues pretend to listen. Roses bloom with careless beauty, unaware of borders or bloodlines. He envies their freedom to wither, their permission to be fragile. The prince also cries, but alone, when letters from the fallen arrive. Names written in careful ink, lives reduced to lines. He reads each one slowly, refusing to let them blur. If they must die for decisions, they will not die unnoticed. Night returns like an old companion, familiar, heavy, honest. He loosens the day from his shoulders, layer by layer. The prince also cries, but alone, into the quiet of his room. Tears fall without ceremony, finally allowed to exist. He does not curse fate or birth, only asks for endurance. To remain just without hardening, to remain soft without breaking. Before sleep, he forgives himself, for doubts, for fear, for being human. Forgiveness is the last ritual of night, more sacred than crowns. The prince also cries but alone, and in that hidden surrender, he gathers the strength to rise again as king of hope. The prince also cries, but alone, when dreams refuse to stay gentle. Sleep brings back faces without permission, voices he buried in daylight. He wakes before dawn, breath unsteady, heart racing without an enemy. Even kings are chased by shadows, even crowns cannot command rest. The palace lies still like a held breath, corridors frozen in expectation. He walks them barefoot in silence, a man without witnesses. The prince also cries, but alone, touching walls worn smooth by time. Stone remembers every ruler, every sorrow pressed into it. He wonders if these halls feel relief when one reign ends, if power leaves echoes or only exhaustion behind. Sometimes he speaks to his reflection, asking questions no one else dares. Am I enough? He whispers, to a mirror trained to lie. The prince also cries, but alone, for love that waits without guarantees, for hearts that cannot cross gates, for hands he must not reach. Affection is a dangerous luxury, every glance weighed, every touch watched. So desire learns to whisper, and longing learns patience. He has loved in fragments and silences, in pauses between duties. Love survived on stolen moments, fragile as glass. The prince also cries, but alone, when those moments shatter. He sweeps the pieces into memory, cutting himself quietly. The world praises sacrifice, but never sits beside it, never holds it while it shakes, never wipes its tears. He carries on anyway, because stopping is not an option, because the crown does not ask if the heart is tired. The prince also cries, but alone, yet refuses cruelty as relief. Pain will not become punishment, hurt will not become harm.